The spaceship drifted silently through the cold emptiness of space, its once humming engines now dead. Inside, the cockpit was dimly lit, flickering occasionally as if trying to hold on to its last breath of power. The control panel blinked weakly, giving off a soft glow in the otherwise pitch-black environment. The stars outside, distant and uncaring, were the only things that seemed alive in the infinite void. Inside the cockpit, two figures sat in uneasy silence. A human girl, no older than 18, gripped the armrest tightly, her knuckles white. She looked over at the alien girl sitting beside her. The alien's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, her silver skin barely visible against the dark surroundings. I don't understand," the human girl whispered, her voice breaking the silence. "We should have enough fuel to get to the next station. Why are we out here, drifting?" The alien girl turned to her, her gaze steady but unreadable. "We miscalculated," she said quietly. "The fuel reserves were not sufficient for the journey. I thought I had more time to calculate a better course, but we're in the middle of nowhere. How are we supposed to survive?" The human girl's voice wavered, her fear creeping in. "What if no one comes to help?" The alien girl's eyes softened. She reached out and touched the human girl's hand, a rare sign of comfort from someone who wasn't accustomed to showing emotion. "We have to trust that we will find a way. I will fix this." The human girl didn't feel as reassured as the alien might have hoped. She had no idea what finding a way even meant in this situation. They were stranded in the most desolate part of space, far from any kind of help. Surrounded by silence and darkness, there was no escape, no way to contact anyone, and their food and water supplies were limited. They had no choice but to rely on each other, to beings from completely different worlds, now forced to work together to survive. The human girl glanced at the control panel again, the blinking lights mocking them. "What now?" she asked, her voice sounding smaller than she intended. "We try to restart the engines," the alien girl replied, her tone firm with determination. "I'll need your help, but we must be careful. If we use too much energy, we could end up damaging the ship beyond repair." The human girl nodded, unsure of how much help she could really be, but willing to try anything. She stood up slowly, moving toward the panel, her legs stiff from the long hours of sitting. The ship felt like a coffin, small and cramped, and, with each passing minute, the air seemed to grow thicker, harder to breathe. The alien girl followed her, standing with a fluid grace that seemed unnatural in the confined space. She moved to the other side of the control panel and began to manipulate the console, her fingers dancing across the keys with precision. "Look for the emergency systems," the alien girl instructed. "They should be able to give us just enough power to send a distress signal." The human girl leaned over, trying to make sense of the complicated interface. Buttons and screens flashed in all directions, and nothing seemed to make sense. Her hands trembled as she scanned the alien symbols and numbers. She had no idea what half of them meant, and she felt a pang of helplessness deep in her stomach. "Do you see it?" the alien girl asked, her voice calm despite the urgency. "I think so," the human girl replied, hesitating. She pressed a button. The panel flickered, and a low hum echoed through the ship, a sound of hope. But then, the panel went dark, the hum stopped, and the lights flickered out completely. The air in the room felt heavy, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. "No, no, no, no," the human girl gasped, slamming her hand against the panel. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," the alien girl said, her voice unshaken. "This ship is old. It might be beyond repair, but we won't know unless we try." Again, the human girl stared at the dead console, frustration and fear rising inside her. They had no power, no way to contact anyone, and the silence outside the ship only deepened the sense of hopelessness the stars outside felt, like a cruel reminder of just how far away they were from everything. The galaxy seemed so vast, so unreachable. They were nothing but tiny specks in the endless void. "We can't just sit here," the human girl said, pacing back and forth. "There has to be something we can do." The alien girl watched her carefully. "We need to conserve energy. Moving too quickly, reacting too rashly, will only make things worse." The human girl stopped pacing, staring out of the viewport into the abyss. "I don't want to die out here," she whispered. The alien girl's expression softened, and for a moment, she allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You won't. Not while I'm here." But even as she spoke the words, she knew the truth. There was no guarantee. The stars outside told no lies. They were stranded in a place so remote. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten them. And yet, despite the odds, they both knew that survival depended on what came next. The human girl's eyes scanned the dimly lit control panel once again, her heart racing. The cockpit seemed to grow smaller with each passing minute, the silence pressing in on her like a physical weight. She couldn't shake the sense of urgency that gripped her, and the fear gnawed at the edges of her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the vast emptiness outside, an endless black void that seemed to swallow the ship whole. Beside her, the alien girl was focused, her slender fingers flying over the controls with a calm precision that the human girl could only envy. She had seen the alien do this before, working effortlessly with the ship's strange technology. But the human girl couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping out of their control. They were stranded. They were alone. "I told you this was going to happen," the human girl muttered under her breath, trying to hold back the rising tide of panic. Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke. The alien girl didn't respond, but the slight tilt of her head was enough to show that she had heard the words. Still, she continued her work, her face expressionless. It wasn't that she didn't care, no. She cared deeply, more than she had ever let on, but this wasn't the time for emotional outbursts. This was a time for action, a time for precision, for survival. "We don't have much time," the alien girl said, her voice barely above a whisper as she glanced up from the control panel. Her words were measured, deliberate. "We need to get the backup systems online. If we don't..." The human girl cut her off. "I know. You don't have to keep reminding me. I'm not blind." She rubbed her temples, trying to clear the fog in her mind. The weight of their situation was heavy to carry. But no matter how much she wanted to scream or break down, she couldn't. Not now. Not when they were so close to losing everything. The alien girl's gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, before she turned back to the control panel. Her fingers moved with a precision the human girl could never replicate. There was something about the alien's confidence that unsettled her. Did the alien truly believe they were going to make it, or was she just pretending for her sake? With a quiet hiss, a section of the control panel shifted, and a hidden compartment slid open. The human girl's breath caught as she watched the alien girl retrieve a small, metallic object from the compartment. It was sleek, almost futuristic, but it was unlike anything the human girl had ever seen before. The alien girl held it up to the light, examining it for a moment before sliding it into a slot in the console. "What is that?" the human girl asked, her curiosity overcoming her fear for the moment. "It's a stabilizer," the alien girl explained calmly, her voice still steady. "It should give us just enough power to send a distress signal if the system responds." The human girl watched closely, trying to make sense of the alien's words. She had no idea how this thing could help, but she wasn't about to argue. They had run out of options. "Will it work?" the human girl asked, her voice tense with doubt. "There's no guarantee," the alien girl replied, her gaze never leaving the control panel. "But it is our best shot." The human girl nodded, trying to steady her breath. She didn't know what to expect, but a part of her hoped that this time, something would go right. They had tried everything else, and yet, there was still this nagging feeling that they were missing something. That something critical was just out of their reach. As the alien girl worked, the human girl couldn't help but notice how calm she was. It was almost as if she wasn't human at all. There was no fear, no panic, just an unwavering focus that made the human girl feel even more out of place. How could she stay so composed in the face of all this? They were stranded in the middle of deep space, with no way to communicate, no way to escape. And yet the alien girl didn't seem to care. The human girl glanced out the viewport, her eyes scanning the endless sea of stars. Nothing but darkness surrounded them, nothing but endless, unreachable space. She couldn't remember the last time she felt so small, so utterly insignificant. "You're still worried," the alien girl said softly, almost as if reading her mind. She glanced at the human girl with an unreadable expression. "That's normal. I'm not worried." The human girl snapped, her voice a little sharper than she intended. "I'm terrified." The alien girl didn't respond. Instead, she slid another piece of the console open, revealing a set of wires and circuits. She worked quickly, her fingers moving with fluidity as if she had done this 1,000 times before. The human girl wanted to help, but every time she reached for something, she was reminded that she had no idea what she was doing. She didn't belong here. She didn't belong with this alien, in this ship, in this vast, empty space. After what felt like hours, the alien girl finally pressed a button, and the control panel lit up again, the hum of the ship's systems slowly returning to life. The human girl stared at the blinking lights, unable to believe that anything was happening. "Is it?" she began to ask, her voice full of hope. "Not yet," the alien girl interrupted. "But it's a start. We just need to be patient." The human girl's heart pounded in her chest as the silence stretched on, each second feeling like a lifetime. The blinking lights were promising, but they weren't enough. "Not yet. Is there anything else we can do?" the human girl asked, her voice barely a whisper. The alien girl looked at her, and for the first time, the human girl saw something soft in her eyes, something almost human. "We wait," she said quietly, "and hope." And for the first time in a long while, the human girl felt a small flicker of hope rise in her chest. The quiet hum of the ship had returned, but the unease still lingered, thick in the air. The human girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her gaze darting from one panel to the next, trying to make sense of the blinking lights and unfamiliar symbols. She didn't understand most of it, but the alien girl seemed to know what she was doing. The calm, measured way the alien moved was almost unsettling. It was as if nothing in the universe could faze her. The human girl couldn't say the same. For herself, she was shaking, but she was determined not to let it show. She had always been the one to keep calm, the one to take charge in a crisis. But this was different. This was too big, too unknown, and she was too small, too helpless in the grand scheme of things. "How much longer do you think it'll take?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Her voice was quieter than she intended, the uncertainty creeping into her words. The alien girl didn't look up from the console. She was absorbed in her work, her hands flying over the controls with mechanical precision. "Not much longer," she said simply, though there was no way to tell if that was true or not. The tone was confident, but the human girl wasn't sure she believed it. The silence in the cockpit felt suffocating. Her eyes flitted once more to the viewport, the vast emptiness of space stretching out before them, endless and unfeeling. The stars twinkled in the distance, a reminder of how small they were in the grand scheme of things. No one would find them out here. No one was coming to help. They were alone. "Do you ever think about Earth?" The human girl's voice caught in her throat. She hadn't meant to ask, but it felt like a question she needed to ask, one that had been building up inside her for hours. "What do you think it's like back home?" The alien girl paused, fingers hovering over the controls. For the briefest moment, there was a flicker of something sadness, longing, in her glowing eyes. Then it was gone, replaced with the same cold, composed expression she always wore. "Earth is distant," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I have seen images of it, but I have never been there. My home, it is not like yours. We are not the same. You and I, your planet is full of chaos. Ours is quiet, peaceful. We do not have your need for constant movement." "Sounds boring," the human girl said with a small laugh, trying to lighten the mood. But there was an emptiness to the words. "We have wars, arguments, all sorts of things to keep us busy. Peace, I'm not sure how I'd handle that." The alien girl turned her head slightly, studying her for a moment, as though she were considering her words carefully. "Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the absence of fear. A life free from the need to fight for survival, for dominance." She paused, her gaze drifting back to the control panel. "It is difficult to explain." The human girl nodded. Slowly, not quite understanding, but not pressing the matter either. The conversation felt oddly heavy, and in a way, it only made her feel more isolated. She was so far from Earth now, so far from everything she knew. She didn't even know if she would ever see it again. The alien girl's voice broke through her thoughts. "We have power," she said. The words were simple. Yet the human girl felt a surge of hope at the sound of them. "But we are still too far from any station. Even if we send a distress signal, it will take time for anyone to reach us." "How long?" The human girl's words were almost a whisper, though she already knew the answer. The alien girl's expression didn't change, but there was a brief pause before she spoke. "Days, perhaps weeks. There's no certainty. But we will survive. I will make sure of it." The human girl swallowed, unsure whether she should feel comforted or more terrified by the alien's words. The certainty in her voice was almost too much to bear. How could she be so sure? They had no supplies, no way to communicate beyond the distress signal, and no backup plan if the ship's systems failed again. "Why did you leave your world?" the human girl asked suddenly, her curiosity getting the best of her. "I mean, if it's so peaceful, why leave it all behind?" The alien girl didn't answer immediately. Her fingers paused on the console again, and for a moment, it seemed as though she was lost in thought. "There are many reasons," she said. Finally, her voice softer now, as though the question had stirred something inside her. "Sometimes, peace is not enough. There's a desire for more, for knowledge, for discovery, to see the unknown. And that's why you came here, to Earth?" The alien girl's lips barely curled into a faint smile, but it was enough to make the human girl wonder. "I came to understand, to see if your kind could ever learn the value of peace, of unity. But now I see it is not so simple." The human girl nodded, her gaze falling to the floor. There was something about the alien girl's words that made her feel even more out of place, like she was part of something much bigger than herself. She had always thought of Earth as a place full of problems, full of fighting and struggle. But to the alien girl, it was something to be studied, something to be understood. It made her wonder, was she just a tiny part of a much bigger puzzle? Was the world she had once known truly as chaotic as she thought, or was there more to it? Before she could ask another question, the ship jolted, throwing both girls forward. In their seats, the human girl gasped, gripping the armrest to steady herself. The alien girl didn't flinch, her expression barely changing as she swiftly turned back to the controls. "Someone is coming," the alien girl said, her tone sharp with focus. "Get ready." The human girl's heart skipped a beat. Who could be coming? Had they been found? Were they about to be saved, or was this just another trap? She didn't know what to expect anymore. But whatever was coming, she had to be ready. And for the first time in hours, she felt the adrenaline rush through her veins. The ship groaned beneath them as the flickering lights began to stabilize, casting an eerie glow over the cramped cockpit. The hum of the engines, weak but present, sent a ripple of unease through the human girl's body. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that whatever hope had been kindled moments ago would soon be extinguished. She gripped the armrest tighter, her knuckles turning white. As her eyes darted to the viewport, the vast expanse of space stared back at her, silent and endless, stretching out like an unyielding sea. "We have power." The alien girl's voice was low, but there was a noticeable edge of concern. She had been working non-stop on the controls, her fingers moving with fluid precision. But even she seemed aware that their chances were slipping away. "But it's not enough. Not enough for what we need." "Why isn't it enough?" the human girl asked, her voice catching in her throat. She felt the weight of the question hanging in the air, but it was a question she had to ask. They were running out of time, running out of options. And all she could do was watch as the alien girl continued to work, her movements steady but visibly strained. "The systems are old," the alien girl explained, barely sparing a glance. "The energy transfer is inefficient. The stabilizer, it's only giving us partial power. It's enough to keep the lights on, to keep the communications running. But without full power, we can't send a distress signal strong enough to reach anyone." The human girl swallowed hard, the crushing reality of their situation settling in. They had no choice but to trust in the aliens' calculations. So, what happens now? The alien girl paused, her eyes reflecting the cold, empty expanse outside. For a moment, the human girl saw something in those eyes, something vulnerable. Something that made her wonder if the alien was just as lost as she felt. We wait. The alien girl said simply, though the words seemed hollow. And hope, hope. The words stuck with the human girl, burning in her chest. It felt like a cruel joke. What was hope when there was no guarantee? What was hope when every system in the ship seemed on the brink of failure, when they were alone, so far from any civilization that it felt like no one even knew they existed? Hope. The human girl repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. Hope isn't going to fix this. We're stranded. We have no fuel, no way to get a signal out. How are we supposed to survive? The alien girl's gaze shifted to the human girl, her expression unreadable. You're scared, she said quietly, almost as a statement, not a question. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact, one that the human girl could not deny. I'm terrified, the human girl admitted, her voice shaking despite herself. And what if no one comes? What if we're stuck here forever? The alien girl was silent for a moment, and for the first time, the human girl saw her struggle with the words. The calm, implacable being who had guided them this far now appeared uncertain. She had no answer to give. The human girl let out a shaky breath, trying to steady herself. The weight of the silence between them pressed down on her. But then, something shifted. The alien girl turned back to the console, her fingers gliding across the buttons, and a new panel opened with a soft hiss. I can try to reroute the energy, the alien girl said, her voice suddenly sharp with resolve. It's risky, but it might work. It might be enough to send a stronger signal. Risky? The human girl couldn't help the disbelief in her voice. We're already in danger. What's the worst that could happen? The alien girl didn't answer, but her hands moved faster, more forcefully now, her focus narrowing in on the task at hand. The human girl watched her, torn between admiration and dread. She couldn't understand why the alien was so determined. Did she really think there was a way out of this? The hum of the ship grew louder, its vibrations trembling through the floor beneath their feet. The lights flickered again, casting long shadows across the walls. The human girl swallowed, suddenly aware of how small they both were, how fragile their existence was in this vast, uncaring universe. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently, throwing them both forward. The human girl gasped, her heart racing as she struggled to keep her balance. The alien girl, however, remained unfazed, her hands still gripping the controls as the ship shook. The console blinked erratically, the screens flashing warnings. What was that? The human girl gasped, her pulse quickening. The alien girl didn't flinch, her expression focused. We've been hit, she said, her voice calm. Something's outside. I don't know what, but it's coming closer. The human girl's heart leapt into her throat. Was it a rescue ship, or something else she dared not even think about? The alternatives, the possibility of being found was a lifeline. But the thought of what might be approaching left her feeling exposed, vulnerable. Is it another ship? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, the alien girl replied, her fingers flying over the controls. I can't get a clear read on it. Whatever it is, it's not broadcasting any signals. It's not friendly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and the human girl's blood ran cold. Something was out there, something they couldn't see, something that didn't want to be found. Should we hide? She asked, panic rising in her chest. There's nowhere to hide, the alien girl replied flatly. We can only wait and prepare. The human girl's mind raced. What was happening? Who was out there? Was this the end? As the unknown presence outside the ship loomed closer, all the human girl could do was hold her breath, waiting for whatever came next, whatever fate awaited them. She knew one thing for sure. They had no choice but to face it together. And together, they would either survive or perish in the cold, silent void of space. The ship rattled again, this time more violently, as if a giant hand had gripped it and was shaking it for sport. The human girl's heart skipped a beat, her body instinctively tensing. She grabbed the nearest console for stability, her knuckles white, eyes darting around the cockpit in a panic. The blinking lights were chaotic now, the entire ship vibrating with a rhythmic thrum that made her stomach churn. "What the hell is that?" she gasped, barely able to keep the fear out of her voice. The alien girl, seemingly unbothered by the turbulence, was already at the controls. Her eyes narrowed with intense focus. "We're being pulled in," she muttered, more to herself than to the human girl. "A gravitational anomaly. Whatever is out there, it's too strong." The human girl swallowed hard. She was well aware of the vast, destructive power of gravity in space, the kind that could tear apart entire ships. "If one wasn't careful, is it a black hole?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could stop herself. "No," the alien girl answered swiftly. "It's something else, but it's pulling us in faster than I can compensate." She paused for a moment, then added in a strained tone, "We're running out of time." The urgency in the alien girl's voice sent a ripple of cold dread through the human girl's chest. They had been so focused on trying to survive the ship's failure that they hadn't even considered that something could be actively targeting them, something that wanted them to stay right where they were. The human girl's mind raced. What could this be? Who or what was out there? "Can you get us free?" the human girl asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm trying," the alien girl replied, her tone sharp. Her hands moved quickly across the control panel, but the screen flickered in response, showing the same static-filled readouts that had plagued them all day. "The ship's systems are failing faster than I can stabilize them. We need more power, and we don't have the resources." The human girl's thoughts raced. They had already tried everything to get the engines working. They had no backup fuel, no communications, no external help. Their ship was stranded in the middle of nowhere, and whatever was pulling them in, it was too powerful for their weakened systems to escape. "Is there anything we can do?" she asked, desperation creeping into her voice. The alien girl didn't answer immediately. Instead, her eyes fixed on a flashing warning sign in the corner of the control panel. With a single swipe of her hand, she opened a compartment, revealing an old, worn-out device. She inspected it briefly, her brow furrowing. "This is our only option," she said after a moment. Her voice tense, she turned to the human girl, her gaze steady. "It's a manual override for the emergency thrusters. It's risky, but it may give us enough push to break free from the anomaly." The human girl blinked. "Manual override? You mean we have to do it by hand?" "Yes," the alien girl confirmed, glancing at the human girl. "But it's not just about the thrusters. The ship will need all of its power to break free, and that means draining everything we have left: life support, shields, everything." The human girl stared at the alien girl, her mind racing. "You're saying we'd be flying blind? No air, no protection? That's insane." "I'm saying we'll have no choice but to do it." The alien girl's eyes were resolute, her expression hardening. "It's the only way to survive." The human girl felt her heart race, her breath quickening. The alien girl's certainty was overwhelming, but the plan sounded reckless. It sounded like a gamble, a huge one, with the odds stacked against them. What if they ran out of air? What if they couldn't get the thrusters to work in time? The questions swirled in her mind, but she knew they didn't have time for answers. "Do you trust me?" the alien girl asked suddenly, her voice low but unwavering. The human girl blinked, caught off guard by the question. Trust? Trust in what? In the alien? In this plan that seemed like a death sentence? But then, something inside her shifted. There was no time for fear, no time for hesitation. If she didn't trust the alien, they were both doomed anyway. And if the alien was going to take the risk, so would she? Double quotes, yes. The human girl whispered, her voice hoarse. "I trust you." The alien girl gave a single, imperceptible nod. "Then we do it together," she said, and turned back to the console. The human girl's hands trembled slightly as she followed the alien girl's lead. The task ahead was daunting, and the sense of urgency hung over them like a storm cloud. They were running out of time, running out of chances. Every second counted. The alien girl worked quickly, her hands moving faster than the human girl could keep up with. She placed her hand on a lever, then gestured for the human girl to do. The same on the opposite side. On my mark, the alien girl said. Her voice was low and steady, but the human girl could hear the underlying tension. The human girl positioned her hand on the lever, her grip tight. Ready, she said, barely able to make her voice sound confident. The alien girl looked at her, a glimmer of something in her eyes, something that felt almost like relief. She nodded once. Now, with a simultaneous push, they both pulled the levers. The ship groaned loudly, its metal creaking as the emergency thrusters kicked. To life, the human girl felt the force of the sudden acceleration. Her body pressed back into her seat as the ship lurched forward. The lights flickered and the control panel buzzed with static, but the thrusters were working. For a moment, it felt like they were fighting against the very fabric of space itself, the ship shaking and rattling as it tried to break free from the gravitational anomaly's grip. The human girl's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the viewport. The stars outside seemed to blur, the black void stretching in every direction, as if they were being pulled deeper into the abyss. Hold on, the alien girl shouted. We're almost there. But the human girl knew. They weren't out of the woods yet. It wasn't over until the anomaly's grip was completely gone. Every second felt like an eternity, the countdown in her mind growing louder with each passing moment. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the ship lurched forward with a final, jarring shake. The lights stabilized, the control panel cleared, and the hum of the engines returned to a steady, reassuring rhythm. They had done it. The human girl stared at the control panel, breathless and wide-eyed. They had made it. But outside, the black void still stretched on, and they knew that whatever had been pulling them was not finished with them yet. It was only the beginning. The ship had stopped shaking. For the first time in what felt like hours, the cockpit was silent, almost unnervingly so. The low hum of the engines had returned, steady and reassuring. But the human girl knew better than to think it was over. She stared out of the viewport, her eyes scanning the stars that now seemed to shimmer more brightly than before. The pull from the anomaly had faded, but something lingered, a feeling of foreboding that gnawed at her insides. They think we're gone, the alien girl said quietly, breaking the silence. She didn't look up from the control panel, but her voice was calm, steady as always. Whatever it was, it's been watching us. And now it's waiting. Waiting for what? The human girl's voice came out sharper than she intended, her emotions fraying at the edges. She felt the weight of their situation crashing down on her. Why doesn't it just finish us off? The alien girl's lips barely parted as she spoke, her gaze fixed on the readings in front of her. Because it doesn't need to. It's studying us. The human girl's stomach twisted, studying them. She didn't know whether to be terrified or disgusted. Whatever force they had encountered was not natural. It had no intentions of simply destroying them. No, it was playing some sick game, keeping them alive only to toy with them. It made her skin crawl just thinking about it. Do you think it's a ship? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, the alien girl replied, finally turning her gaze away from the screen. Her eyes were dark with something the human girl had never seen before, fear. But whatever it is, it's not like anything we've encountered before. The human girl's heart pounded harder at the alien's words. If the alien was afraid, then they were in deep trouble. The alien had seen galaxies, planets, species the human girl couldn't even begin to comprehend. If something had scared her, we can't just sit here and wait, the human girl said, trying to push the panic that was threatening to rise in her throat back down. We need to get moving. We need to get out of here before whatever it is comes back for us. The alien girl took a long, slow breath, her eyes softening slightly. I wish we could, but the systems are failing. We're operating on borrowed time, and there's nothing we can do to change that. No, the human girl shook her head, determination flooding her veins. She couldn't accept that. She wouldn't. There has to be something. You've fixed the engines before. You fixed the power. What about the weapons? What if we can fight back? The alien girl's eyes narrowed, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. The weapons, they're not designed for this. And even if they were, we don't have enough power to fire them, not unless we sacrifice the rest of the ship's systems. The human girl stared at her. "You're telling me that we have to sit here and wait to die?" "No." The alien girl's tone sharpened, her voice firm. "I'm telling you that we're not dead yet. We're not giving up. Not until we know everything we're up against." The human girl fell silent, her chest tightening with the realization of just how close they were to the edge. But even as fear settled like a heavy stone in her stomach, a part of her admired the alien's resolve. There was something in the way she spoke, in the way she held herself, that reminded the human girl of a strength she hadn't known she had. It was the kind of strength that made her push forward. Even when everything inside her screamed to stop, she took a deep breath, steadying herself. "What do we do now?" "We wait," the alien girl replied, her voice calm but with a weight to it. "But we also prepare. I've been monitoring the energy output from the anomaly. There's a pattern. It's not random, it's deliberate." The human girl frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," the alien girl said slowly, "that it's drawing us in. But it's also testing us, watching us. The longer we're here, the more it learns about us, about our ship, about how we react. It's waiting for us to make a move." The human girl's mind raced. A pattern. They were being studied. Every action, every reaction analyzed. It was like being trapped in a cage with a predator that was far too smart for them to outwit. "So what? We just keep waiting for it to make its move?" she asked, her frustration starting to boil over. The alien girl shook her head. "No, we're going to make ours first." The human girl stared at her, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking," the alien girl said, her eyes focused on the screens once more, her voice low and thoughtful. "There's a way to break the cycle. We can turn the tables." A spark of hope flickered in the human girl's chest. "How?" "We can force the anomaly to act," the alien girl said with quiet intensity. "I can rig the ship's core systems to emit a pulse signal strong enough to distort the anomaly's pattern. If we do it right, we can disrupt its hold on us long enough to break free." The human girl felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. It was risky, no. It was more than risky. It was desperate. But in that moment, it felt like the only choice they had left. "What do we need to do?" The alien girl's eyes glinted with the faintest trace of something like admiration. "We'll need to work together. I'll modify the ship's core to emit the signal, but I'll need you to help me recalibrate the systems. The core can't handle too much pressure, so we'll have to be precise." The human girl's heartbeat quickened, her mind snapping into focus. There was no more time to waste. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady despite the fear still churning in her chest. The alien girl nodded, the faintest flicker of approval crossing her features. "Then let's make sure we're not the ones being hunted." As they began their work, a strange sense of unity settled over the human girl. They had no weapons, no allies, and no guarantees. But in this moment, working side by side with the alien, she felt something powerful stir inside her. It wasn't just fear, it was determination, born from the knowledge that they were not giving up. Not yet. And for the first time in a long time, the human girl allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. The pulse of the ship's engines vibrated through the cockpit as the human girl adjusted her grip on the control panel, trying to steady her shaking hands. The air was thick with tension, each passing second feeling like an eternity. They were so close, and yet everything still felt uncertain. The alien girl was already at the console, her fingers moving with swift, deliberate precision. Her expression was one of quiet determination, but the human girl could sense the weight of the moment. They were on the edge, staring down what could be their only chance at survival. "Is it ready?" the human girl asked, her voice hoarse with anticipation. The alien girl didn't look up, but her hands didn't stop moving. "Almost," she said, her tone steady but filled with urgency. "The pulse will disrupt the anomaly's hold on us, but we need to get it exactly right. If we fail, don't," the human girl interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. She couldn't allow herself to think about failure, not now, not when they had come so far, when the stakes were higher than they had ever been before. "We won't fail," the alien girl responded, her voice carrying a quiet confidence that the human girl desperately needed to believe. "But we have to act quickly. The anomaly is already reacting to our energy output. If we don't hit the pulse at the right moment, we'll be trapped here forever." The human girl's heart raced in her chest. It was no longer just about surviving. It was about escaping this nightmare that had pulled them into its web, to break free from the unseen force that had been testing them from the start. The void outside felt like a cage, a never-ending stretch of nothingness that threatened to swallow them whole. "Do you trust me?" the alien girl asked suddenly, turning to face her with an intensity that made the human girl pause. It was a question that had been asked before, in quieter moments, moments where trust felt like the only thing that kept them tethered to each other. The human girl thought about it for a heartbeat longer, her eyes locking with the alien's. Before nodding firmly, "I trust you," she said. The words sounded more certain than she felt, but she knew they were the only words that mattered. If they were going to make it, they had to do it together. The alien girl nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Then we begin." The human girl watched as the alien girl reached for a small, sleek device at the side of the console, and in one fluid motion, she connected it to the ship's core system. The screens flickered again, and the low hum of the engines grew louder. The faint glow of the control panels turned from amber to red as the ship's systems adjusted to the alien girl's modifications. The ship was alive again, in a way that made the human girl's skin prickle with both hope and fear. "On my mark," the alien girl said, her eyes fixed on the readings in front of her. "We activate the pulse when the anomaly's pattern shifts. That's our signal." The human girl's heart thudded in her chest, a loud reminder of the gravity of the situation. This was their moment. This was their shot at freedom. "Are you ready?" the alien girl asked, a quiet challenge in her voice. The human girl inhaled deeply, her mind racing through the possible outcomes. They had no backup plan, no second chance. This was it. She looked at the alien girl one last time, the unspoken bond between them growing stronger in that silent exchange. "I'm ready," she said firmly. The alien girl's fingers danced across the console, triggering a sequence of commands that sent the pulse racing through the ship's core. The entire cockpit shuddered as the ship's engines roared to life with an intensity that nearly knocked the human girl off her feet. The screens flashed bright, chaotic patterns read warnings, flashing lights, the entire system overloading. The ship groaned under the pressure, its hull vibrating as if it was resisting the force they were about to unleash. "It's now or never," the alien girl said, her voice a low growl as she prepared to release the pulse. With a swift, precise motion, the alien girl activated the sequence, and the ship's core erupted with a surge of energy so powerful that the human girl felt it in her bones. The pulse shot out in a blinding arc, hitting the anomaly with the force of a storm. The ship's systems screamed in protest, the warning alarms ringing through the air like a death knell. For a moment, everything froze. The human girl held her breath, eyes wide as she waited for the inevitable. But then, as if in response to the ship's defiance, the anomaly wavered, its grip faltering. The black void outside twisted, contorted, like a living thing disturbed from its slumber. The pull that had been dragging them toward the center of the universe suddenly weakened, the invisible hands loosening their grip. It was working. "It's working," the human girl cried, her voice a mixture of disbelief and joy. She could feel it. She could feel the tension in the air dissipating, the ship's systems slowly regaining control. The anomaly, whatever it was no longer the threat it had been. They were breaking free. But just as the human girl allowed herself a brief moment of relief, the ship suddenly jolted violently, throwing both of them against their seats. The force of the shockwave slammed into their bodies, sending pain shooting through their bones. The human girl gasped for breath, clutching at her seat, her heart pounding in her chest. "Hold on," the alien girl shouted, her voice strained. "It's not over yet." The pulse disrupted the anomaly. "But we're not out of danger." The human girl's vision swam as the ship rocked again. Harder this time. She couldn't think straight. The ship was shaking so violently that it was impossible to tell which way was up. Was the anomaly still trying to pull them back in? Was it a trap? The uncertainty swirled around her, threatening to drown her. But then the ship's systems came back online, the warning alarms silenced, and the violent shaking began to subside. The hum of the engines smoothed out into a steady rhythm, and for the first time, the human girl dared to believe they might have done it. They had broken free. The alien girl turned to her, her expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a glimmer of relief, of triumph. "We did it." The human girl's heart surged with emotion. She couldn't quite believe it, but the reality was sinking in. They were free. They had survived, for now. As the ship stabilized and the vastness of space stretched out before them, the human girl allowed herself to let go of the fear that had consumed her for so long. They had done the impossible. They had survived the nightmare dot, and for the first time in a long time, the human girl felt something she hadn't felt since they'd crash-landed, hope. But even as she exhaled in relief, she knew one truth. The universe was vast, and it would never stop testing them, and that was the only certainty they had.